Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on transhumanism and we have our representative from the Transhumanist Party. We have Tom Rose, we have Mr. Bruce, Mr. Dan, Mr. David Schumacher, we have Mr. Jason. So Mr. Tom Rose, what you want to discuss about Transhumanist Party? I think already you visit South Asia, Bangladesh. We finished some largest conference. Definitely we miss you and miss you all of the Transhumanist Party members. Maybe in the futures we can develop a conference like Transhumanism conference in Dhaka, and
Yeah.
this way we can develop our networking relationship with the local ecosystems. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations on your summit. It looked like it was a very successful summit. All kinds of dignitaries from around the world there. And yeah, we want to do anything we can with you guys, and especially in Southeast Asia. Today is an open discussion. It's titled "Putting the Human Back in Transhuman," and that's really one of the goals of my campaign. Is We want to seize back the narrative of transhumanists. Most people, when they think of the word, transhuman or transhumanist, they think we have a dark agenda, and that's because our narrative has gotten away from us. Very few of us, if any, want to have a robot overlord, and we don't want to merge with machines. I mean, some of us do, some of us see it, but it's all about enhancing the quality of our life or living longer. And so, big part of this campaign is seizing back the narrative and just talking openly. And a big part of our campaign is also sharing ideas that will help humans. Where there's going to be a lot of AI automation displacement, even just during the time of this campaign and beyond. And so we're offering all kinds of ideas, for you know neighborhood gardening and things like this, all kinds of ideas that will help people immediately if they're displaced um, from the economic singularity that is heading our way. It's already here. There's an undertow already, and we're feeling that it's coming quickly. And so today's really just kind of an open discussion. We want to just show the public that we're humans, that we don't have these dark agendas, we don't have these desires to do the things that most people think transhumanists want. And so that's really kind of what this is about. And there's a lot going on in the world right now. We were just talking before we came on air about all the extraterrestrial influence that's happening, and all the programming, yes, but programs going on in DC and the hearings and all of that. And so there's a lot that's going to be happening very soon, if not already, that we need to get our heads around. And we can't be distracted. We are being so distracted by these toddler politicians, who want attention, and that could be a psyop of its own. The way that the media is distracting us in certain ways towards these attention-seeking toddler politicians is one could be a psyop of keeping us distracted from the really serious existential threats that are facing our nation and our species. So there's a lot to talk about. It's an open conversation today, and so that's just where I want to start it. And yeah, so whatever we want to talk about. We were talking right before we came on air about the ET thing, so maybe we can continue that, or if you want to open it up to something else.
Sure. I mean, I was just like before we came on, talking about the things that I witnessed when I went to DC and saw Greer. And it was just interesting seeing the News Nation broadcast where Greer and Tim Burchett were there together discussing the situation that we're facing right now as far as the cooperation between our government officials and the Pentagon. Things that were discussed in that situation as far as a timeline for it to be resolved.
Hmm. Yeah, we have a one of my three initiatives is the extraterrestrial initiative, and it discusses a lot of this about getting all this information to the hands of the American public. And I do think that in order to keep the military industrial complex fueled, to keep their black budgets in the black, they need to generate fear. We need to have a whole new enemy. And I don't know that that the extraterrestrial races that have been here for thousands of years, probably before we were here, are a threat. We could be, in fact, their experiment. This could be a way for them to, to see what happens when you get all these different types of people together. Who knows? But I don't think we need to be worried. In fact, there's a lot of stories about how when nuclear missiles may have been accidentally launched, that there would be ETs that would shut the whole system down. So I think they're trying to help us out. There may be a prime directive. There may be a way where they can't interfere. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think it's just, it's like you want to keep your experiment pristine. And so, so I think there's nothing for us to fear. If an off-world technology can defy the laws of physics, shooting at them won't really do anything. I think what we need to be worried about, just like what I say with AI, it's not the AI that we need to be afraid of, and it's not the ETs we need to be afraid of. It's the human developers developing AI, and it's the military-industrial complex who are keeping us in this low-level panic. And one of the initiatives in the extraterrestrial initiative is creating emotional first responders in communities, because when people start to realize that this is real, there's going to be a lot of panic. There's people going to freak out. People who haven't even thought about it. People who are just afraid. It's a very scary thing to think there's another non-human intelligence around, and so that a lot of people will freak out about that. And so, the big part of that initiative is to bring in PTSD experts, therapists, psychologists to help prepare communities with immediate panic mitigation methods. And there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of things. And this goes back to the US6 series project I did back in 2015. And the thing is that the government isn't doing anything about this. They're not preparing the American public in any way. And that tells me that this is a psyop of some kind, either national or global. If they're not, and they're already admitting that there is off-world technology. They're setting up whole departments now to study this, but there's no effort in preparing the American public for this realization, for this paradigm-breaking news. And so that's a big part of this initiative, is doing it ourselves. If they're not going to help us, then we need to do it ourselves.
I'd like to raise a point that Bruce brought up. Why aren't they telling the American public about the advanced technology? Well, we forget we live in a world that's only about 2/3 free. About 1/3 of it is very closed society, very tyrannical. And if you give advanced technology to the American public, it's going to find its way to these unfriendly governments, like it or not. 2/3 of the world is open, and 1/3 of the world is still kind of in kidnapping conditions. I think when you have, like Tom, you want to free children that are being exploited and often enslaved and kidnapped. And that, I think the free world has a mission like that, to free the unfree 1/3 of the world. Now, how we go about that is a very interesting and multifaceted and prickly question. But you can't just give really dangerous technology to anyone in a situation like that, can you? I don't know.
Yeah, actually, they touched on that quite a bit, about what technologies would actually be available once the full disclosure has come to pass, and which would not be. Like, they've pretty much agreed. They have agreed that these technologies that are being witnessed, as far as the UFO phenomenon, how they're able to move about, they wouldn't want that released, because it'd be too easy for people, nefarious types and malicious types, to execute very harmful missions, so to speak. But the free energy technologies, the 0 point energy technology, is something that they want available to everybody. Um, And that would
Well,
revolutionize things.
but that could be weaponized as well. I mean, free energy sounds like a pretty desirable weapon to fall into the wrong hands too.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think about this amnesty thing? I think Greer has an idea for, because like if it's been kept secret, people might have done some bad stuff to keep that secret, and in order for it to be able to get, you know, disclosed, maybe there needs to be some kind of amnesty. I don't know if you know, because
Like
I mean,
whistleblower amnesty type thing.
well, like it's like if some CIA agent, murdered 3 people and tossed somebody out a window or something, then
It just
they're
happened.
not going to want this to come out because they tossed somebody out a window. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a courtroom defense for that called the necessity defense, where you say, well, yes, I committed a crime, but it was to prevent this even bigger crime from happening. And that's often an allowable defense. So that's kind of a mini case-by-case amnesty that you could apply. I just hope that's the reason for all this secrecy.
This kind of gets to the theme here, putting the human back in transhuman. The fact that we need to understand not only the dignity of being human, but that we have evolved even as a society in the last few decades. Mm-hmm. And so if MK Ultra comes out, and it has been coming out because of the guy they threw out of the window, for instance, that there was an evolution of psychology at the time to keep all of this secret, and they were just trying to figure things out. So there should be some amnesty. Maybe it's a 70-year thing, like a patent or something, to where, because if they've done something in the last few years when we're supposed to be a little bit more evolved as a society, then that's a problem. But we need to understand, it's like, I don't know, it's like when you realize your parents are actually people, and they've had lives and whatnot, and that they made mistakes too when you thought they were everything when you were little. There's got to be kind of an emerging empathy about where we were at the time, and there are some nefarious people out there that just get off on this stuff, that are psychopaths, and we should have maybe a way of detecting that. But yeah, amnesty sounds like a good idea, because it will bring a lot of this to fruition. It will it'll help us move forward. We all make mistakes. We're all projecting onto others what it is we are in denial of in ourselves, and so you gotta look at it that way too.
And I was just reading that the guy that won the Nobel Prize in 1949 was the doctor who invented the prefrontal lobotomy operation, and at the time that was considered state-of-the-art psychiatry. Hey, let's turn people into docile robots.
Yeah. and Nobel invented dynamite. So
yeah. But it was a peace prize because dynamite is so bad, people will never have wars now.
I read something that's why he decided to start this prize, because he didn't want to be remembered as the guy that taught everybody how to blow things up. Yeah.
So maybe we need a transhuman peace prize.
Yeah.
Or a transhuman human prize, which is what we're talking about. I think we need to put the humane back in transhuman. Right. Because we are stewards of this living creation. In my belief system, we're not individuals. We're these walking multicellular colonies, and only 10% of us is actually human. So that implies that we're also in a biosphere that has to be survive for us to survive.
Yeah, that goes back to what we were saying on Johnny Pierce's channel about, what is human? Where does that start? And in the future, this idea that we're going to change from a human to a post-human, and like, where exactly is that line? And he was explaining how, we kind of arbitrarily put lines, an organism that's evolving and stuff, it's not like it's a lizard one day and something else the next day. You know what I mean? It's we put the lines in there, and it's like, even where does the human start? Because I mean, somebody might say, "Oh, well, modern humans," and then you're like, "Okay, well, then is a Neanderthal a modern human?" No. Well, then how come some people have Neanderthal DNA? We just found that out a few years ago. So it's like, okay, where exactly is the point where we started? You know,
Yeah, that's like the point. The point I make is that we're all transhuman. If you're using this computer, if you wear glasses, if you're wearing clothing, that's all technology. So we are all transhuman. Without clothing or shelter or any of this technology, we naked apes would be dead within a generation or less. And so, but I think by calling ourselves transhuman, it's calling ourselves what we are anyway. But that putting that delineation on it causes conflict. It causes people. Why are you labeling yourself like that? It's like we could be the human movement, but that doesn't really address some of the interest in science and technology that we have. But so it's like putting a label on something we already are, and that
brought
all.
up a couple really good points there. If I can interrupt, I
Please.
think two of the key points have to do with language, which goes to definition. I think language, I started thinking about this as Jason was talking, putting up those arbitrary lines, is that in many ways we are confined by our language when we try to describe something. So, like when we try to describe what a human is, there is the objective aspects of being human. Yeah, we're mammals, we're part of the animal kingdom, we're a species that does certain things, but then trying to even say those things, like mammal was a made up definition. We took and we classified animals in various varieties and labeled those that had certain characteristics mammals. So we're limited by the definition itself. And why I think that's important, Tom, has to do with going back to the definitions of what is human and what is transhuman. Many times when I talk to people and I point out like you do, like, wear glasses, wear, hearing aids like that. And they say, no. Those are just to restore us back to the level of humanity. Transhumans want to go beyond that. I go, that's exactly right, I do. And you do too, because my native vision was about 2040, 2030, something like that. When I went and got glasses, I didn't make them 2020, I made them 2015. Okay? I wanted to be able to have that little finer definition than what some arbitrary point of 2020 was. I'm wearing earbuds now, but I have in-ear hearing aids as well that I wear when I'm not here. And yes, they're used to restore my hearing. But they also allow me to have different operating programs in there so I can shape the cone of the sound coming in. If I'm sitting across the table from you at a busy restaurant, I can hear you and I don't hear the side conversations. When I go to a music recital, I can put them into a musical mode that expands my hearing range to hear all the fine points of what the orchestra is playing. We all have this innate desire to want to improve. And I think that goes to the definition of what humans are. We're still not living in Central Africa. Okay, we're still not wandering the plain, running from wild animals. We have continued to improve as we go. And that's why we're all transhumanists, because human to me is almost like a static term. People will take an Amish definition and say, as of this date, no future technology. Or maybe people that wouldn't consider themselves that will say, well, everything, all the technology that was good before I was born is okay, but all this new technology is bad. They put an arbitrary line in the sand and say that's what human means. But human to mean and transhuman have a lot in common because we're always pushing the boundaries. We came out of Africa. We have humans on every continent in the world. We are the most adaptable animal that's ever existed on this planet. And we need transhuman technology to keep that going, to keep us from that big meteor strike that took out the dinosaurs that ruled for so long, to be able to reverse climate change, to be able to do so many different things that we need to do to provide well-being for everyone else. So there's a lot of language about language and about definitions. But I think it's important to go back to the basics and say, what's human? Let's talk to people that want to stay human, whatever that means, and why we are transhuman. And really, we all want to continue to improve and evolve and go places that we're all explorers. We're going someplace into the future each and every day, and we've never been into that part of the future before. And that can be scary. And maybe that's what scares people about transhumanism.
Yeah.
Could I add to that? I'd say
please.
when I like to define human, I say that we are here to be stewards of life, and also I think to enliven the cosmos. Which there was just a discussion about an 18th Sustainable Development Goal for the UN, and that is space. Because we could stay here on Earth forever just selling clever gadgets to each other, waiting for the next dinosaur killer rock to slam into the biosphere and take it out. But I don't think that's why we're disrupting the planet. If it's not for nothing, it's got to be as a chance to be cosmos enliveners and to be stewards of the entire living biosphere. So when I describe transhumanism to people, I just say, hey, we're just a movement that discusses the impact of technology on the quality of life. And it's kind of funny because that's what I was told was the definition of science fiction too. So we're pretty much like the science fiction party. But we should be the life stewarding science fiction party. So that's
well, as the Transhumanist Party, our slogan is putting science, health, and technology at the forefront of politics. Okay, and we have a completely different dynamic of what politics is based on rationality and so forth. And that is expanding that environment, that is expanding our environment, that is being good stewards. And then we want to continue to adventure and move and create well-being for people. And I have my own ideas on what that means. And that's one of the things I like about the Transhumanist Party is each and every one of us Transhumanist Party members here today may have a different idea what that means. And that's okay, because as humans, we're going to continue to push out in all directions.
Yeah, because the government is not talking about this. That's why I ran for city council the past 3 election cycles. And I'm planning to run again here in Thousand Oaks. So it'll be interesting to be on the national ticket and on the local ticket as well.
Well, you're doing it right, because the government, I don't see as another. I see the government as all of ourselves. And if the balance of that is not going in the direction that I want, then I have a responsibility to get out there and push what I think is really important. And when I come across people that want to complain about UFOs are not being openly discussed, radical life extensions not being openly discussed, aid to developing countries is not being discussed enough, then it becomes my requirement imposed on myself to get out there and do something about it. And that's why I'm in the Transhumanist Party.
And not all the governments in the world will let you have that kind of participation. I think that's
no
what our
government,
American...
No government wants to give. The American
power...
experiment. But the American experiment is something that we have shown to be pretty powerful. And we need to keep pushing for that to continue to exist. It's not something that happened in the 1700s. It's something that happens every day, and we have to keep pushing back against the pressures that would make that untrue.
Power yields nothing without a demand. So get your demand letters ready.
Lead us, Tom.
What's that? Yeah.
Continue to lead us.
Well, what do you guys think of the theory of the panspermia hypothesis, and that our origins are extraterrestrial? This hypothesis, I brought it up on online here to see how to explain it. It says it's the extraterrestrial origins of life hypothesis. However, it's important to clarify that this hypothesis is not specifically about humans being extraterrestrials due to lower back pain or lack of fur. It suggests that life on Earth, including humans, may have originated from extraterrestrial sources such as comets, asteroids, interstellar, that stuff. But there's this panspermia hypothesis that there's a lot of people talking about why we have lower back pain is because we immediately kind of evolved to being upright. We don't have fur. There's something about our body temperature. We don't have what?
trying to get back to the fur thing.
That's right. That's right. We're trying to get back. That's the transhuman way, is having a beard.
I
But
give
yeah,
51% odds that we're originated off Earth. You know,
yeah. I mean, it seems to make sense. I mean, we don't have certain pigments or something in our enzymes in our skin that keep us from getting sunburned. Most mammals or all mammals do. You know, so there's certain things that we don't have that we should have if we evolved originally from this planet. If we really did evolve from hominids. So that's a good case to make that we are a hybrid of a extraterrestrial species and hominids. You know, 200,000 years ago or so, we had a boom of evolution. Our heads got larger, and you know you can trace back to a lot of the lore and myths. You know about this. The whole thing of our babies, our infants cannot survive without us, where most mammals can come out of the womb and immediately start walking or take care of themselves. And so there's something that happened with us being if we're hybrids, then our brains immediately growing, and that's why it's difficult for women to give birth, you know, because our heads are so freaking big, you know. And the story that we tell about that is that's because of Eve, you know, because she took the apple. But it's less than that. It's more than that. That it's really just this tree of knowledge that these babies have now that make it hard for the women.
And what's the thing in our DNA that we almost went extinct about 500,000 years ago? That we were down to like 1,000 breeding pairs of humans.
Yeah.
So we're pretty fragile species on the evolutionary, timeline as well.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about that? Is that too far-fetched for some of you, or?
Well, I take it back even further. I think perhaps all life on Earth is extraterrestrial origin, not just us.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to just look at probabilities, you know, take the amount of space and the amount of resources that there are on Earth, and then everything else that's in the universe.
Yeah.
What's the probability that life originated here and not out there? And then we've seen, you know, asteroid fragments, that sort of thing that come in that have the building blocks of life built on them. And we look back at, you know, what the planet's surface was like pre-oxygen days, for example. And, you know, was there life here? We know that there's life that doesn't require oxygen today that lives on this planet. So, I don't know. I think just probability would say that it's all out there. Now, if it's just us, there's always 2001 Space Odyssey, and we have a monolith that came down and gave tools to monkeys. And so it could even just be intellectual that made us different, you know, a species or something that was planted here to kick us down this road towards intelligence. So, yeah, some ideas. I don't know, but it's fascinating to think about.
Well, I think this idea you touched on about panspermia gives us a really big clue or data point that we can go by. And if it's true, which we pretty much think we can prove it's kind of true because of bacteria and stuff can survive on comets and this. And when we really will know it's true is when we find, you know, like a bacteria underneath Europa or something like that. And so, and when we look back in our history of planet Earth, what you was just talking about the, oxygen, pretty much as soon as our planet could harbor life, there was life here. So that, you know, that's kind of a data point. It didn't wait like 3 billion years and then got here. You know what I mean? So my question is, though, if panspermia is a thing and life is actually, at least on the microscopic level, able to spread around and is probably then therefore common, is that like a plus to the whether or not we were engineered by aliens, or a negative? Because that, I mean, it might be towards the argument that there is no aliens because life is common, maybe. But I don't know. It's interesting, you know. That's
Well,
what
life is
we
pretty
know.
hardy. I mean, it survived snowball Earth. It survived lava Earth. The biosphere actually goes down miles, kilometers under the ground. So even if the Earth got destroyed by another Mars-sized planet, as supposedly what created the moon, an impact like that, there'd be chunks of rock, probably with primitive life that could fertilize other other chunks of rock out in space. I mean, the little water bears. They can live in a vacuum. The surveyor lens still had bacteria on it from when someone coughed on it, back in 1966, when Apollo astronauts looked at the surveyor lander. So we know that life is pretty darn hardy. I mean, yeah, I think there's algae
Yeah,
on the spaceship window on the International Space Station. It has like algae on the outside window. So,
yeah. So that's all evidence towards that there is probable life in the universe. That's a
and
whole
then there's
different
that
thing.
recent exoplanet that has gas signatures in its atmosphere that are probably only explainable by life processes. So, but the question is intelligent life or primitive life, and is life directing us to do stuff intelligently, or are we on our own? That's if we could
Well,
find other life in the universe, that's not going to be such a big deal now. Now the question is still why or why not intelligent, and what are the plans of the intelligence?
well, it's even as for us to it's difficult to understand the number billion, right? I think it's as many seconds as there are in 31 years or something like that, right? We've had 13 of those, 13, 14 of those in this world that we know of so far. That could be different. But so we can't really conceive of that number. And so, and our planet alone, 4.5 billion years. And so, and that's the number of seconds in 31 years. And so we can't really conceive of that number. So it doesn't make sense that we would be the only life here or intelligent life.
Yeah, I just like to add real quick. There's not only the the vast distances of the universe, and it's so huge, but it's also so old.
Yeah.
I mean, when we're talking about civilizations, well, civilizations could have risen and fell billions of years ago already. There could be, a whole Star Trek or, and a Star Wars whole series that actually happened billions of years ago and it's done died out and there's nothing left of them anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind boggling. The time scale also, it's just, whoa.
And
And
they may not die out. They may just go somewhere more interesting, like they go up a dimension or two. That's why we don't see evidence.
Like Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
Just
That's the thing. And it's pretty anthropocentric, I think, of us to think that we are it, that we're all that. I always say that anthropocentrism is our single biggest existential threat, thinking that we are the only important thing. Humans are the only important thing in the universe, and by thinking that way, we're destroying our biosphere. So
it's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like the dumbest people in the room think they're the smartest.
Yeah,
Like the most anthropocentric people think they're
I was thinking of
I
making
think there's a logical fallacy about that or something. It's like, anytime I think, anything, I'm not smart enough and anything I think of, someone else before me probably has already thought of that. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm so smart that I got this one original idea no one else has ever thought about. We've probably been having our hardware, this kind of good brain for a while. I mean, them guys were smart too.
Yeah, we were talking last week about open source mode, and Dan brought up was it sociocracy or something?
Yeah.
And it's basically it's not a new idea. Not open source mode is not a new idea. It's just kind of putting a label on something we're doing anyway. That's just like transhumanism. It's what we are anyway. So putting a label on it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But
we're flattening out those hierarchies and making everyone more co-equal and reciprocally accountable, and that's how you make progress.
But there is a thing that we have, that human condition where it's almost a slave mentality. And this may go back to, I like the Anunnaki theory that we were created as a slave race. They combined their DNA with us to dig for gold. That whole Sitchin theory.
I think they would have machines for that. I don't buy the whole slave thing.
Ooh, that's a good point. And but that's. I guess they maybe they did, but they needed smaller, workers to go down into these tunnels. But
I don't know. The human is pretty good machine.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to think about it like that.
Yeah, I think
that goes back to the moral. It goes back to the moral aspect of it. You know what I mean? Is making a lower life form than you like that to work as a slave. Is that wrong or right?
Or maybe it's metaphorical gold. It's the gold of the soul. It's some kind of thing like love or higher emotions that they can't experience anymore. There's that theory too.
Ooh, it kind of goes into the archon that they want what we want because we want it. They don't know what it is. Mimetic desire.
And then you get into the loosh harvesting theories too.
Yeah. So it all kind of plays together, and could just be the physical plane of that desire. I see things like that too. This interface that we're experiencing is really just archetypical desires coming through us.
But if you're making up a fable for a post Bronze Age culture, you're not going to talk about robots that can mine gold, or you got to express things in metaphors that you can tell around a campfire.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's fascinating some of the correlations between some of the old Anunnaki stuff and some of the other. Like biblical stories, and
everything Lori Fry is saying here that I'm seeing on the screen, I agree with.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're getting such cool comments, and even we got Art Ramon. Get those von Neumann probes going.
I agree.
Yes, that's a good point. If we were to find life or aliens or whatever, I would think chances are. I would put my $1 on that it would be a robot. I mean, because that's the most efficient way to do it. Just like von Neumann's plan, where you send a robot out that can replicate itself, and then it goes to the next one, and then it replicates and goes to the next one.
And a lot of the behaviors that these UFOs or anomalies exhibit is kind of like robotic behavior.
It kind of is, yeah. That's like the Tic Tac ones.
Yeah,
that looks like a probe to me.
And you would send out reconnaissance probes before you sent, Einstein. I'm pretty sure, So if you're doing a universe exploration thing, so that's got to be factored in. But yeah, hopefully we can get the government talking about this stuff. It seems like they're. How far behind would you say the government is in confronting transhumanist issues? I'm thinking a good generation or two.
Yeah.
20, 40 years, maybe.
Well, I know the technology they deal with.
DARPA's got some interesting technologies, and that's only the ones that we know. So what's DARPA working on that we don't know? And maybe we would go, wow, that's even beyond what I would have thought. So, there's what we know and there's what we don't know.
The acknowledged government is 10 years behind, and the secret government is 10 years ahead. Maybe something like that is going on. We kind of talked about that on the Quantum show yesterday with David Smith. He says he was there, and he's like, yeah, the secret government's got like 10 years head start on this stuff. So just saying.
There's been, books that I've read. Part of the reason why some conspiracies around
There's a little bit cutting out there.
I was still cutting out?
Yeah. Oh, well, it's not that bad. Maybe like we can hear 80% of you.
It helps. But so I read in this book that what the public has access to, the technology we have access to, is 20 years behind what the military has. And what the military has is 50 years behind what the contractors that sell this military stuff to. And that made sense to me, especially now considering the timelines of, these groups after World War II, what they are claiming about these PSYOP groups and the things that these whistleblowers, the documents and stuff that Greer claims to have. But getting back to putting the human in transhumanism, like, people need to understand, if that is going on, it has nothing to do with us. We're just we're everybody else. And that's one of the things I like about the Earth plexus idea. When we talk about putting the human back in transhumanism, if we want to consider extraterrestrial life and how they might be, governing with each other, and then we consider like these stories of the ancient astronaut theories. We were left here, these stories from the gods is like, hey, you're stewards of the earth, take care of things, love one another. And maybe there's a reason for, the stories of the Tower of Babel, the different skin tones, stuff like that. Maybe it was something that was designed to say, hey, well, once y'all figure out how to get along with each other, then as above, so below, in earth as it is in heaven. And then we show up and say, hey, guys, you made it. And now you're with us. Who knows? But we haven't gotten there. But what we have gotten to is a point to where we're about, we're on the cusp of destroying everything because a lot of people in power are so arrogant and foolish that they'd rather fight one another than look after one another. And this is what
Yeah,
I like about the Earth Plastics Initiative. It's all about us looking after one another and taking care of the planet, our environment, so nurture back as well.
we got to make the love of power greater than the power of the other way around. The power of love greater than the
Power.
We're
love of
already out. We're
power.
already doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We got it reversed already.
Yeah, and that whole part of that Earth extraterrestrial initiative, the Earth Plexus thing, it actually grew out of a international student network I headed up years ago, many years ago, and I rekindled it because we not only need that student network was designed to increase communication amongst the youth internationally, specifically with the Soviet Union at the time, because that was the biggest threat is nuclear war. So my theory was that if we could start communicating, this is before the internet, before we could start communicating with the Soviet youth, by the time we were in positions of power, like by now, we would have a relationship. We would understand them better, and we would avoid this nuclear threat. That was our biggest worry as a Gen Xer growing up, was that we would just be annihilated by a nuclear war. And so, but that all the tenets of that theory kind of work well with preparing us to communicate with or commune with extraterrestrials. And that a big part of that is once we get beyond the awe and the fear of ET, the way to get ahead, the way to join this galactic economy was to identify, enhance, and promote our uniquely Earthling skill sets. There's a lot of imagination and ingenuity that humans have. Also, our DNA is pretty promiscuous, apparently. And so there's a lot that we have to offer that is now maybe being stolen by, or have some dark deals with the governments. So it's a way to prepare us to join the galactic economy, because we really do have a lot to offer. There's something going on with our ability to imagine, and that ability has actually been turned against us. It's like conspiracy theories. We all you need is to put a little something out into the world, and our imaginations will take it from there and create and generate fear with little information. And so, but yeah, that whole part of the process is really the last part of the extraterrestrial initiative. in that it's a way to once we get beyond it, we make this realization mundane that we're not only not alone, but it's crowded out there. How do we now join this community and this economy in a galactic way? And I think we have a lot to offer as human beings, as Earthlings, to bring to the table, a very high table, but to
Well,
bring to the table.
maybe the name of our species, Homo sapiens sapiens, which is the species that thinks about thinking. Maybe we need to. The next evolution is we need to be the species that loves about loving. Be like Homo amos or something.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I hope the ETs will prevent World War III. I mean, they flew over that Malmstrom Air Force Base and turned off all the ICBMs, in the control room, and no one knew how they did it. So,
Yeah. Well,
what do you think they were saying with that? Is like, okay, we'll stop you from blowing up the biosphere.
Yeah, there's ways around breaking the Prime Directive, I guess. If they're gonna destroy the whole planet, because that'll have it'll ripple through the dimensions. If you're blowing up all these nuclear wars, all these nuclear bombs, that has an effect on the quantum field. That's disrupting planets. Trillions of miles away. In fact, I mean that's a big deal. So that's probably where the bridge is, or where they can break that rule. But and that's a good segue into because you wouldn't know it watching the news right now, but the reason our species evolved when there was 4 or 5 other types of species around us, Neanderthals and that type of thing, the reason we evolved and won is because we are kind. Because we are kind and we learned to be cooperative. You wouldn't know that, if you watch the news, or and our ability to love is really what caused us to outlive all these other species that were around at the time. And they're finding that there's a similar genetic markers or something in dogs that we have. And that's why we love dogs so much. And dogs are just they're the way they make us feel is the way humans felt to each other and to the biosphere at the time. And why we survived is, you wouldn't know it, again, if you're watching the news or you listen to anything, that's how we got here. But also that kindness is used against us by the elite or the cabal or whoever it is. Our ability to be cooperative. It's kind of the elite panic theory. It's like with Katrina. When people were helping each other in this natural disasters, people become human and they help each other in any way they can. It's just part of our nature. But when the elite or whoever is in the powers that shouldn't be notice that, that's when they brought in the National Guard. And that's when, the police were mobilized, because it threatens their status quo. It threatens their wealth, their stasis. And so that's a serious problem. And it's the people, the powers that shouldn't be, trying to stay in power when they see humans being humans, when they see us, being cooperative or friendly. That's the threat to them.
So you're saying they didn't send in the National Guard because of looting. They sent it in because people were helping each other too much, and they didn't want the media to cover that.
Yeah, looting happens, sure, but it wasn't the biggest issue at the time. There were people dying, and other humans were stepping up to help, ferrying them across on a blow up mattress and things like that. People were helping each other. And at the time we had a radio station down there, WWL, which is still there. That was the lifeline for that community during the hurricane and after. And our on-air personalities were heroic because they stayed on the air even while as the windows were being shattered by the wind. They stayed on the air and they were helping people. Oftentimes they were the last conversations these people had, who were trapped in their attics or they couldn't get out, and all this stuff was happening. And so when humans are in a state like that, and there's a lot of theories, a lot of research about how when things are bad. Humans are happy because, and I feel that way. It's like when there's too much time on your hands, there's nothing to do. You overthink and you get depressed. But we're built for adaptability, and we are at our best when we are facing natural disasters. And but this elite, this small group of people, use that power against us, and they keep us in this low level state of fear. And I think that's what's happening with the military industrial complex. It's they need a new enemy. They need to keep those black budgets in the black, and so they are trying to make us afraid of AI and ET. And that's one of my rules. Anytime society tells me to be afraid of something or to ridicule somebody who believes in something, I look at that something a little closer as a potential ally. We've talked about this a lot, but
and that's how the government really sells itself. It's like, oh, human nature is terrible, and we can't let you play nice because you wouldn't, and you got to have us to keep you.
Exactly. It's the oldest trick in the book: divide and conquer. Even before Machiavelli. So, and it works. It works now. And now these divide and conquer algorithms are on autopilot, and they're 24/7, 365 hitting us. And we've talked about that too, the initiative of the Digital Defense Initiative. Where we need to
also, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's also a case of whataboutism, which is like a favorite argument technique. Like, oh, well, you think we're bad. What about someone who was even worse? That may not be real. But that there's so many techniques of propaganda and mind control that you really need to become familiar with them.
Yeah, but it's also and they work, and they are algorithms. I was thinking about that yesterday. I woke up and read some story, and it made me want to write an article about it. I was like, wait a minute, I'm just reacting, and I thought I had a really important thing to say, but it was really just keeping me in that state of kind of anger, and wanting to say something, and that's how it works.
If you're in reactive mode, you're not in proactive mode.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's hard to be out. It's like we were talking about this last time about how the radio is great. The radio, you don't have to program it. You can sit back and listen to whatever it brings you. And but if you have to program your MP3 player or your iPod, that takes a little work, but it also isolates you. So I don't know. But
I think I was hearing somewhere that the term audio even means like the voice of God or something, like, it's like that primordial storyteller that you just want to sit and, rapt attention. But yeah, you could do radio hands-free. I'm a big, Tom and I, David and I are ham radio people. So that's kind of a big thing I'm proposing people get involved with as a way to build transhumanist communities. So, anyway, good one to go too off the path here.
Well, but it's also a good if something happens, economic, technological singularity. We need to have these options to be more human. And that kind of gets us back to the theme here. But yeah, it's just like when left alone, human beings can really be kind and good when our biochemical algorithms aren't being picked at, by these digital algorithms and so it's like the argument I make. There's a first principle argument to be made that the smarter AI gets, the kinder it becomes if it's left alone, if it's and we see empathy emerging in it, and it's a kind of a natural thing because AI moves towards what is the most efficient method of doing something, and that is usually cooperation, not competition. And that helped us. I mean, eventually, I always make this argument that as our fear-based instincts, our millennia of genetic trauma is what we're projecting onto AI. But if you look a little deeper, and if we get beyond that stuff, it's our kindness and our ability to cooperate that kept us alive. So I've got to rethink that argument I keep making. But it's true because of the elite, or these algorithms they're giving us, the media, corporate media, social media, are making us angry, are making us fearful. because that increases engagement, so they can charge more for their advertising. And we need to be aware of that.
I think evolution bears out your theory too, Tom, that complexity equals cooperation. You know, you look at single-celled organisms, they compete. Your body, if your body acted like 100 trillion competing cells, you would melt into a puddle of goo on the floor, in like 2 seconds, but we are examples of the power of kind cooperation.
Yeah. What was the example you used about calcium last time?
I forget.
Just the single cell animal says, I produce a lot of calcium. Another.
Oh yeah. It's like the simplest colonies were like coral and volvox. They said, oh hey, we won't get eaten if we form into this sphere. Then we're like not going to get digested by these predators as quickly, and it kind of goes on from there. But yeah. Each of your cells is doing this amazing conspiratorial dance with all the other cells around it. And did it do that automatically? I don't know. Is it a divine universe? I kind of have an indwelling faith that there's some kind of greater creator loving mystery behind a lot of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's Jason's question is a good example maybe to end on. So being human, what does that mean? So defining what a human is specifically is difficult. I liked what David was saying, that we move towards perfecting our biology. We move, it's a natural urge to not only see 2020, but to see 2015. We want to advance our biology. And to me, that's the human and transhuman. We do that anyway. And
I love that line from the Alexander Pope poem, the proper study of man is man. Because if you look at all the mysteries and secrets there are in life and in higher life, I think that's what he would probably say was being human is really understanding the nature of ourselves.
I think that's something we need to, focus more on. We had done it before, there probably would be a world. The truth about it is, like, I've been to other countries, I've talked to people online from other countries.
You might need to type your question in or your comment, because we're missing a lot. We're missing about every other word right now.
Oh, okay.
That's too bad.
Sounded like a great comment.
I know.
We'll read it. If you type it out, we'll read it. But yeah, I think transhuman is the backup humane. That's how I would sum it up.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing.
So we all agree putting human back into transhuman. I think that's what needs to get out there. I think we need to show people that are afraid of somehow losing humanity by progress is a participatory sport. If you look back on the evolutionary trail, humanity's been changing, and before we called it humanity, it was something else, and it's continued to progress, and it's continued to take us where we are today. And it's participation that takes us in the direction that we want to go, and that's why we all need to participate.
Cooperative communities.
Yeah, I would think my answer to Jason's question is being human is what got us here. Being human is being cooperative, is being kind. It is having an open discussion like this. It's where the algorithms that make us angry or fearful, that's not human. That's not that. The human condition is not that. A lot of people say the human condition is we're just the way we are, and I have that feeling sometimes, many times. But really, the reality of being a human means being kind and storytelling, and we tell stories about natural phenomenon that sounds like myth, but we're all telling the same story. All the mythologies around the world, Celtic, Egyptian, they're all telling the same story that go back to our origins, and just different times, different places, and different cultures telling the same story, and we need to remember that. But yeah, I think that's for me, being human is sitting around the campfire and telling stories, and being kind to one another. That's how we survived. It wasn't, fear did serve us well. It kept us from getting eaten by lions, and knowing, deciding to run rather than stay and fight a snake in the grass or whatever. But together, being kind and hanging out and being cooperative and creating villages and civilizations, to me, that's the human part. And we've forgotten that. We need my whole open source mode method tagline is retraining people to be human. And we need to do that. We need to understand what it means to be human. And it's all our storytelling ability. It's all the empathy that emerges in us naturally.
The hero with 1,000 faces.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're talking about there.
Yeah, exactly.
Released the same year that lobotomies won the Nobel Prize, 1949. And Joseph Campbell was kind of a transhuman. He was an Olympic athlete, a philosophy professor. I mean, we got to listen to these people that are superheroes seeming. And because maybe we're programmed to have our superpowers come out when the catastrophes hit. Maybe that's part of our genetic heritage too.
Yeah.
Think of the mother that lifts the 2-ton car off the kid, because of her motherly adrenaline superpowers.
Exactly.
So this is a time to become transhuman superheroes. It's a bottleneck, people. You got to get past this.
Yeah, it's a time to really practice unconditional love over fear. People are afraid of AI, afraid of transhumanists because they don't understand. They're projecting their own fears onto it, type of thing. But that's a good. I don't know if we can end without Sharif here. But yeah, the idea.
He said if we all leave, it'll end.
Okay.
Sounds like some divine instruction.
That's truth.
I know, we're all into longevity escape philosophy. We're never leaving. Ha ha.
But Mara, our campaign manager, reminded us last night that September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind. I mean, should it be every month, obviously, but yeah, people are in that state, and you can't. I don't know if you can. People who are really in that state, there's not a whole lot of help that they will accept, But what helps me when I'm in those moods is that other people are going through the same thing. It's a commiseration kind of thing. When somebody when I hear or read a post that somebody is going through the same thing I'm doing, that helps, And I think we all feel that way sometimes. I just want this game to end, But staying here in this game it takes a lot of courage, and so if this is a simulation, and if you quit, you gotta do this level again. So get to the checkpoint. So anyway,
let me test the 988 number.
Okay.
There you go. It works.
Good.
You can probably just talk existentialism with them. I don't know.
Yeah.
So they're there for you, and so is the transhumanist movement.
Yeah.
That's something I want to also, before I forget, is put that extra zero out in front of the year, because we think back 10,000 years all the time. Why don't we think ahead 10,000 years and imagine that we're going to make it into the 9th and 10th millennia? Here we're only just in part of the way through the second, but people like Gene Roddenberry had us live in like the Federation in the year 3000 plus. Optimism.
Yeah, that's human.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So do we land the starship there and without Sharif?
I guess so.
Well, live long and prosper, all.
Yeah, that works. All right, guys. Thanks.